Welcome to Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch. We are your hosts. I'm Timothy Thorne, and this is my wife, Janice Thorne. Our objective tonight is to bring you some information, some education, some intellectual inspirations, stimulations, yes, for this evening. We have a special guest with us tonight, Ms. Doris Gillard, and she is an educator. She's actually 75 years old. She probably looked like she's about 50, but she's actually 75 years old, and she has seen a lot of things. And we're going to get into that. I just want to give you a quick, brief bio of Ms. Gillard. She has 3 degrees. She has 2 master's degrees in arts and science and literature. She graduated from Bowie State. She's been an educator for over 42 years at Bowie State. She started there and never left. She taught English, communication courses, and she was also an academic advisor and mentor to host of Bowie State University students who all love her today after 43 years of service. So with that being said, we're going to get right into our show with Ms. Gillard. First question is the impressions of a tumultuous
era.
Era.
And we just want to welcome you as well.
Yes.
Thank you for being a part of our show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
It's great to be here.
Yes. So what is your impression of that era?
When we speak of the 60s, and your description is definitely on point, and coupled with your introduction of the 60s, I cannot help but to remember the pain and hurt that I personally experienced and still do, and the anger. You know, first it was pain, hurt, and of course we're talking about, we cannot speak of the 60s without speaking of the civil rights movement.
Yes.
And the struggles and fights and protests for those rights that are rightfully ours by birth. And as a student at Bowie State University in the 60s, and I'll go straight to it in 68, we, the students, had major concerns about the injustices, the inequality that Bowie State University was being subjected to, not because it was not a great institution, but because it was a Black institution. And as a result, we did not receive the funding from the state board, from the state that we should have received. And because of the lack of funding, our curriculum was not as strong as it could have been. Our professors were underpaid. The library was not stocked with the materials that we needed. And back then, you know, it was the physical hands-on books. Yes. We didn't have internet. And there were many other things, the housing itself, the dormitories. Sometimes we had hot water, other times we did not. There were exposed pipes. As a matter of fact, one of my classmates and I were speaking recently, and she was sharing, we were reflecting, and she reminded me, she said, now I remember I got burnt on my arm. I rolled over one night and my arm hit one of those hot pipes, and I have this scar even until today. So fast forwarding, so we protested, and the protest it lasted approximately 5 days, the end of March through early April. And I remember sitting in front of the administration building on April the 4th, 1968, singing the civil rights songs, waiting to board the bus to go to Annapolis to demand an audience with the governor, Governor Agnew. And while we were there, and remember, well, I was a freshman. It was my spring year semester as a freshman. First time I'd been away from home, and I speak for many of the other students. So we were really babies, but we were fighting for a cause. And suddenly I looked up and I saw nothing but these horses and state troopers on them, and the horses prancing back and forth, and the boots that the troopers had on coming up to the knees, and guns in the host belt. And it was really unnerving. And we had a choice. I had a choice of either retrieving and not going through, or going through with it. And so I did. And we occupied the state building and were arrested. And while we were being processed, we heard that Martin Luther King had been assassinated.
Wow.
Oh, it was so surreal. I was devastated. I entered into Twilight Zone.
Yeah. And we hear all the time about people who were on the front lines. We hear about them all the time, but to actually be engaged with someone like yourself that was instrumental and took in firsthand knowledge of what was really going on, because we were kids. So we really didn't know the impact of the era. But so we're so fortunate to have you to share these kinds of events.
Yes, that was an amazing and a terrible time for us as far as racism goes, and for fighting for our rights and things that we believe in. And for you, I know that had to be a scary moment, scary times, and for you and your fellow classmates as well.
That's
but
true.
It was an important time.
Yes, it was.
It was an important time.
And it was a time, like I say, the 60s, we're talking about a decade. And I was born in North Carolina, and I spent summers there with my grandparents. And as a matter of fact, I spent some of my early childhood years there. So I remember seeing the signs, whites only, colors. And I could not go to that water fountain. I had to go to the one that said colored. And a couple of times I made the attempt. My grandmother said, she pulled my little coattails, they sit down. I wasn't allowed to do that. And it wasn't, and I knew it wasn't right. And the same thing with the restrooms, of course. So I did experience it.
Right.
Yes.
It was such an amazing time period that we read about in the books, but we want to talk further about your experience, because we do believe that there are so many angles to this. And so we want to encourage our listeners to come back to Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch as we talk to Doris Gillard.
Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch is where you get to see us live and in living color with our views, opinions, and thoughts about what is on our hearts and minds. This is where we bring life-changing dialogue.
Welcome to Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch.
We are your hosts. I'm Janice Thorne, and this is my husband, Timothy Thorne.
We are here to
excite you, inform you about our different perspectives about life.
Join the fun each week. Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch.
Welcome back to Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch. We have a special guest with us tonight, Ms. Doris Gillard, and we are having such a great conversation. And we're getting into what ignited your passion to get involved in the social and civil rights movement. Now, was it just about the school needing supplies, or did you just wanted to go as far as the civil rights?
No, it was not limited to Bowie State University, but the passion itself, again, the pain, the hurt, that, and again, it translates into anger. And it makes me want to do something. You know, we can be angry and we can be upset, and we can choose to talk and have our own personal isolated conversations about the issues without doing anything about it. And so I am one who, when I have pain, and especially when I get angry, and it took a while for me to learn how to control it and direct it in a positive manner, then I have to take action. And that action, you know, is consistent across the board. And we can take action in so many ways. We can do it physically ourselves, as I indicated earlier, in actually participating in the protest itself and being a major player. But we can also do it through encouragement, through education, through directions and guidance. But we must be informed. We must know the facts. We must know who the players are. And remember that, you know, we should not go alone.
Anger and passion can be fueled by so many different things. And I believe that during that time period, that anger and that passion just was the foundation to the movement. Where did you see your space in the movement? Where was going to be your spot to talk about or speak through?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's so ironic you would take me there. Because after the protest of 68, I did become the voice of the students. I became the editor of the newspaper. And it was, you know, I support freedom of speech. Some people will take it, you know, to the extreme, as we very well know. But to speak the truth and speak truth to power came through the Ebony newspaper.
Wow.
And students were anxious to voice their concerns and to offer solutions. And the faculty and administrators played a key role in that they received the messages, the concerns, and they would actually have meetings with the students and talk about possible solutions and what all of the different components could do. So my space, I would say, was also one of voice. It was one that still maintained proaction, and fellow classmates as well, going to the administration for change, and stepping outside of my comfort zone. So I chose to go to the American University to get my first master's degree. And while there, I concentrated on African American literature and African literature. And the professor I had was awesome, a white gentleman. And he was so steep in our African American literature and African literature that I could only sit with awe and just receive all of his information.
Mm-hmm.
And he had studied abroad in Africa for many, many years. And then I thought about Bowie. I said, we don't have a person at Bowie like this.
Mm.
And that goes back again to the funding and our ability to hire someone.
Mm-hmm.
So our space expands.
Mm.
You know, we should not place ourselves in boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We should definitely know our values, our passion,
Mm-hmm.
and pursue it, and be willing to take the chance,
Right.
to take the risks.
Right.
Mhm.
Now, did that come about as a result of the unity that was stirring in the atmosphere? You know, the students coming together, everybody having a common cause. Is that what brought that bond together so that administration could hear you?
I would say yes, that was definitely part of it. But we also have to remember that, you know, we had already lived so many of our, you know, 17, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of us brought to that particular environment our own personal experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like my experiences from North Carolina, and my grandparents being sharecroppers,
Mm-hmm.
and my grandparents being Christians, and knowing the word and instilling in me the importance of standing my grounds
Mm-hmm.
and pursuing what's right, not only for self, but for people as a whole.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
It sounds as though that you were born not to follow a program, but to live free. If that makes sense to you.
That does. It makes sense.
You didn't want to be bounded up, and the regular program was just to listen to somebody else and
Right.
go to school, get education,
Right.
don't make no trouble, and this
Right.
and that. But you didn't see the fairness in that, or the equalness in
That's
that.
true.
And
Mhm.
going to American University versus Bowie State, I'm sure you saw a difference in the two schools.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And it continued to ignite
Mhm.
the passion.
Passion.
Mm-hmm.
The passion could not die,
Yes.
just like today.
There were two contrasts.
Yes.
You were able to see two
Yes.
contrasts of this is where I am, but this is
It's where-
another way of living, and
Yes.
why can't we have
That's
that
correct.
as well?
That's correct.
So, what is the Circle K?
The Circle K International is a collegiate organization for students, and it's the largest one in the world.
Mhm.
And the purpose of it is to promote service, scholarship, and personal development.
You were
And
a founder?
as a matter of fact, I did. I established Circle K on Bowie State University's campus
Mhm.
I think that was about early 90s.
Mhm.
And as far as I know, it's still well and alive today.
Well, we
That's
definitely
amazing.
want to hear more about that as we go
Okay.
into our next segment.
All right.
But we're so grateful to have Doris Gillard here with us on Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch. We'll be back with our guest, Doris Gillard.
Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch is where you get to see us live and in living color with our views, opinions, and thoughts about what is on our hearts and minds. This is where we bring life-changing dialogue.
Welcome to Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch.
We are your hosts. I'm Janice Thorne, and this is my husband, Timothy Thorne.
We are here to
Excite you, inform you about our different perspectives about life.
Join the fun each week. Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch.
Welcome back. We are Timothy and Janice Thorne with Late Night with Tim and Janice on the couch. And we are really excited today because we have a grand opportunity to talk to, and I'm going to call her an historian, because so many of our, those that birth legacy, you know, we read about them in the history books. Well, today we have Doris Gillard here, and we're talking about the birthing of legacy, her legacy, and how she was very instrumental in the civil rights movements, the civil and social movements that happened during the 1960s. And before the break, we talked about her founding of an organization, Circle K. And we'd like you to just share more about that.
Well, it was the establishment of Circle K on Bowie State University's campus. And again, that was in the early 90s. And it's a student organization, and it consisted of young girls and young men and all different ethnic backgrounds and races. And I remember that I did have a very mixed group of young people, and they were energetic, they were young, they were hungry for knowledge and new experiences, and they too had compassion for those who did not have or needed more. And so we did service activities. And I remember one in particular that was done at one of the nursing homes. And the Circle K young men and women went into the home, and they read stories. They sat and held conversations. And the seniors who were there were so grateful. You could actually see the smile on their faces.
Wow.
And how their eyes lit up. And there were also conferences that I took them to, and they competed with other collegiate Circle K organizations on other campuses. And it was lots of fun and education as well.
That's amazing. Thank you for that about the Circle K. I want to get back to what was the outcome from the protests and stuff that you all did.
Yeah, good question.
Well, yes, and the immediate response that we got was the following year, the spring of 1968, the freshman dorm was closed for renovation. And the state gave us enough money, of course, to renovate that building. And they brought trailers on campus for the young men to live in, so that their residence hall could be freed up for the girls to live in. So it was renovation of a building that we already had Tubman Hall, which we wanted to keep. And we also received funding for, that was now later, a few years later, for the student union. And actually, we did not get money for a whole new building.
But you got
so
something.
we got something, but we still didn't get what we should have gotten.
Right, but that was a direct response from the protest.
That's true. That's true.
Protests
That's
do
true.
Help.
That's true. And certainly we were appreciative. However, we wanted what was due.
Yes.
We wanted what was due. So what happened, the institution was able to connect two buildings, the student union and what was then the Pullen Library. and had the two connected with a tunnel, not a tunnel.
A bridge.
A
like
bridge, maybe.
Yes, but and excuse me. And so it made a difference. It definitely did. It gave us more space. But eventually, what happened was that, and this is not necessarily a direct outcome of the protest, but certainly is related to the protest. And many of the HBCUs in the Maryland system had concerns, and so we eventually filed a lawsuit.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
And that
interesting.
came during the time that I was a faculty member at Bowie, and so the fight continued, the
Yeah.
struggle continued,
Yeah.
and for equality.
Right.
It was only last year that Governor Hogan signed the bill for the lawsuit settlement.
Wow.
And that was for the HBCUs, Bowie State, Morgan, Coppin, and Eastern Shore. However, it's unclear as to whether or not any of the institutions have received any of that
The funding.
funding yet.
Wow.
I believe it's supposed to begin next year and over a 10-year period. So that would be two of the outcomes.
And it's a
are
great
related.
outcome. It's a great outcome.
It's a great outcome, but you look at the time that went by. So it seems as though that they took their time on trying to prove something that was due, for your rights. And as being African Americans, they didn't really care and was trying to put it off. This is, you said he just signed a bill last year, and that's been 30 years.
And as a matter of fact,
and the fact,
right.
No.
And as I stated earlier, when I stated that, when we make a commitment, oftentimes most of the time, we should not go alone.
Yes.
right?
So all of the HBCUs came together
Yes.
And unity.
in unity, and they filed the lawsuit about 15 years ago. And it was on the basis of funding discrimination. However, the settlement indicates that the funding was rewarded because of duplication of programs at your PWI institutions. And actually, those programs were at your HBCUs initially, and we could not keep them because we did not have the proper funding for them.
The fight always continues when it relates to people, unfortunately, of color. We have to stay in the fight. We have to stay on the ground, boots on the ground, because without that fight, without that energy to see laws change, processes change, nothing's going to happen unless we have the kind of involvement that you participated in. And we're going to continue this conversation. We are enjoying the birthing of legacy. So we're going to do a part 2 with you. So we want you to stay tuned. We want you to stay tuned with the Late Night with Tim and Janice on the Couch.